Welcome to the Love Does podcast. My name is Jody Luke, and I have the great privilege of hosting this podcast on which Bob was on last year, Bob Goff, who's the founder of Love Does, and he's back, but it's even better because he's brought sweet Maria, his wife.
Yeah.
So we're in studio today.
Yay. It got way better.
So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
A lot of people ask me, when did you first meet Bob and Maria? And I get to say, in the 90s. It feels like that's like the 1800s.
Yes.
It hasn't been that long, but I have had a front row seat to watching you both live your life. And I have to say that I have the greatest amount of respect for the both of you. I really do. I have watched you navigate midlife career changes and reinvent yourself over and over again very successfully. I've watched you raise your kids and your family with great intentionality and in a way that they have lives that are interested and they're curious, they're adventuresome, they're compassionate. And the proof is in the pudding because they're awesome. And then I've also just watched you guys live out your faith in ways that people stop and they look at their own faith and then they think, you know, how could I do things a little bit differently? And they reconnect in ways it's really remarkable. So here's my first question. I'm getting to it. Okay. But you guys are really different. But you've somehow made it work together. And so what do you value most about each other that has enabled you to create a life of great purpose and impactfulness?
Yeah, I want to hear from you, your perspectives on that, Maria.
Okay. Ooh.
I think Bob should start, actually.
Oh,
Okay. Well, I would say they're the things that you're capable of. And then there's some stuff that you feel called to. And that calling feels like this very, not mystical, but it's kind of elusive. But to say, what are the things that are lasting? What are the things that are important? What are the things that you want to be part of your legacy? When somebody thinks of you, they would think of whatever it is. And it's probably, it's noble to make hoodies. But to say, what if you said there's something that's lasting after the hoodie? Is, goes through that bad paint job and the whatever, like what's something lasting. And so I think we're all searching for that. And the fib is that we think somebody else has the inside scoop or the track or everything's lined up for them to do it. And I think we realized, no, we could just be like ordinary people with extraordinary folks like you and others surrounding this, the team that's in Uganda and go through each of the countries. So these extraordinary people, and then we could just step back and just be along for the ride. So that's it. So I think it's not being limited by your capabilities. See what's going to be lasting and then find some people that are just extraordinarily good at executing that.
Which is actually your wife, who's been extraordinarily good about being by your side. But what have you valued in him? Because you created this this pretty impactful life.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, Jody. And I do love that we go way back and we could say the same thing about you, about how your life has evolved. And it's just been an honor to sit in the front row seat of your life too. But Bob and I started out and I think we knew we were different, but I feel like we liked that about each other. I think our kids like that about us too, that we're very different. But I think the things that we have in common kind of create who we are together. And that's what you were saying, is that we're intentional. Like we think about what are the things that are important to us and would matter to our family. And then we go after those things, I think, with just reckless abandon and do whatever it takes to get that done. So I feel like that's been our common theme from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And
that is true with reckless abandon.
Yes.
And, 12, 15 years into your marriage, at that point, that Bob he comes up with wild adventures, right? You're used to that at that point.
Yes.
But he comes home one day and he says, hey, I have an idea. Let's start a nonprofit. And I think maybe you and I will be the first two donors. And get this, we may be the only donors. Who knows, right? So what did you think about that at that time?
Yeah.
And what were those early days like starting Love Does?
Okay. So he was a lawyer first. He was an attorney, 9 to 5, did all of that. But I could tell that there was a stirring in him, that wasn't all there was in his life and his career. And I I saw it coming. So I wasn't surprised that there was going to be a next chapter in his life and what he did in the world and how he used his gifts as an attorney to help people who needed help. Like he's just always had this very strong sense of justice and wants to go in and help the least of these or whatever. He just is very, very good at that. So I wasn't surprised by it. And then the part of it being a nonprofit and we're going to fund it, honestly, I was relieved because it took the pressure off of this wild dream. And we don't now have the expectations of a bunch of donors while we're trying to figure out, or he's trying to figure out, is this going to work? So in that learning curve in the beginning of it, it was like, yes, like let's not fundraise. It's my least favorite thing to do anyway. And then he had his publisher say, let's go ahead and okay, let's go ahead and I'll write a book if you build a school. And so these checks would come in from the publisher to Love Does It. It would just be like in our door, out our door, over to you, yes. I think, who was handling all of that. And in the beginning, it was really good, but it just kept going because I don't think anybody really expected Love Does to have the impact that it had in people's lives. And so a lot of people were reading it and buying it. So as schools were being built and paid for, then it gave us the opportunity to build more schools, like go further with it. And so that was an interesting experience to have this really great idea, like let's start a nonprofit. I don't know if you called it that in the very beginning anyway.
Restore International.
It was Restore International. It wasn't really, we weren't necessarily thinking of it as a nonprofit. It was just this really great idea to go help people in other countries.
That being said, I think any big endeavor, early successes are huge. And so was there a story maybe from, you can have a great idea and we'll say, I mean, you say it all the time, let's unleash 10 ponies in the race and a couple, finish past the finish line.
Yeah.
But was there a story from those early days that sort of confirmed in you that this was a great idea? Like I'm going to
Yeah, I remember early on renting the Tacoma Dome or the whatever convention center and getting this idea like let's bring together a bunch of speakers and Crowder bought his band and Kid President, and so let's get a bunch of fun people together and we'll charge a bunch of money and then we'll like set up a bowl, and if somebody had a need you could just take some money, and if you wanted to put some money in you could put some money in it, and then we gave people money. One of those things that's been done so well for so many years to give people a little bit of money and see what they do with it to benefit others. And I remember being at a gathering, I want to say a year or two later, and somebody came with this big duffel sack. And I was like, oh, I wonder what's in the duffel sack. And she opens it up and it's all these wads rubber banded together of money. It looked like a drug deal. But they took that $5 and they bought a bunch of beads and they made some necklaces and they sold it and they bought more beads and so she just took all the money and threw it in the duffel sack, and I put that on the overhead on the way home on the flight. And I felt like there was that moment where instead of us putting it on the home equity line of credit, like that there were other people that were part of it. So it felt like that Greek wedding where you grab the shoulders of the person in front of you and say, Opa, and start dancing. So I felt like the conga line got a little bit longer and longer and longer. And then we brought in some really masterful people to take us from there. So instead of being from like, a small like donor base, like both of us, to then a larger one. And so now I think you have like quite a few. And so I think there's something neat I love when you send the donor receipts, there's always a little bit of confetti in it. And so just that idea of it isn't business, it's a worldwide family of friends.
Definitely a share.
Yes.
And from that time, you've gone around the world many times and no more often place than Uganda because that's where our biggest presence is. And so we just got back a couple of weeks ago from a pretty epic trip, I think. But what were your observations from the trip and what were your takeaways?
Well, I was really delighted to do it with the three of us and a couple other really good friends. It was just like, it was fun. So the camaraderie is the thing. I remember someone saying when you go overseas, some people call them missions trips, which wouldn't be our style. But when you go overseas, number one, say the people I'm going to travel with, we want to be better friends at the end of this. And number two, we want to just get our head on a swivel to see where God's showing up, because he's already there. We aren't bringing him. And number three, if there's a way to be helpful, then just be available to that. Instead of going over the premise, I'm going to be helpful, so here I am. And really what's happening is everybody on the ground scrambling around to help you out. But I feel like we nailed number one. We were just all walked away better friends. And then number two, that idea of having our head in a swivel and just being amazed at how God is using these terrific, brave Ugandan people, whether they're in leadership of the country or in leadership at the Love Does School. Just amazing, just watching them do it. And then number three, being able to tag along on a couple of things and bring a little bit of whimsy and ideas and say, oh, that might work. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I've been a couple of times, but it had been 7 years since the last time I was there. And I would say that the takeaway for me was just realizing how big the footprint has become, not just the physical structure. We flew in from Entebbe in like a 12-passenger plane. And so we got a really great glimpse from up above, like just how big the campus has grown since its very humble beginnings. Of it was just land with a couple of water wells being dug and a thatched roof hut that, you know, somebody stayed in for a period of time, and how it started with 9 students. I just was reflecting on that and how far we have come. 7 years ago, when I took that trip with Bob, I had just written my book, Love Lives Here. And part of the arrangement that I made with the publisher was that they would help build the library, the new library. And so that has even changed. So we got to see not only the original library, that it's become the infirmary, I think, or something like that. And there was dentists coming after us that were going to help tend to the kids. But then there's a new and even bigger library. And so just even seeing how this expansion in a very short period of time is just unstoppable. Yeah, that was my takeaway, is just that this is really getting big, and not just like the structure of it, but the people who are there, and all of the country directors that have come and gone, and Lavi, who's there now, and Godfrey, and just really quality people, and JB, who's been there from the beginning, and Dennis, who I call Dennis, but he has a more formal name now. But just being able to see the trajectory of everybody's life has expanded since the very beginning, and that I walked away feeling really proud of the people and what they're doing there, and just embraced by their hospitality. Like Bob said, you go somewhere thinking, oh, I'm going to show up and I'm going to help them or bless them. And you end up walking away feeling like, wow, they just really touched me and moved me in ways that I didn't know I needed or wasn't expecting at all. And so I'm probably going to take a couple more weeks to let all of that sink in, because that's just like one impression. And that was like day one.
I know. And it was a share. And I love that you love to share it with other people. And it was a pretty remarkable trip for everybody. Of course, we got to meet with the First Lady. And while we were there, the president came as well. And that's kind of unique to you, Bob. And when we went to Poland, we met with the government leaders there, that a lot of nonprofits, they want to be under the radar. They don't necessarily want to be real flashy, especially with governments. But you've always made it a priority to connect with the leadership in the country or the city. Why is that?
Yeah, there's a strategy behind it. So like a lot of people, we've used this analogy before, in the top couple inches, they may experience us as like, you know, confetti and unicorns and yippee skippy and all that. But underneath that is a mile of strategy.
Yes.
And that was actually brings to whatever it is that you're doing, if you're listening to the podcast, just to have that gravitas. So there is a weightiness to what you're doing. Not that like sad weightiness, but that there's something substantial there. So we just took the several branches of government early on, and we just made friends with folks in the judiciary. And now they were lower court judges, and now they're sitting on the Supreme Court. So the arc of doing this for decades, like they're the ones that are calling the shots for everything. And then in the executive branch, the president and first lady, and then beyond that, you were so strategic in having the right ministers, from cabinet level ministers, education. And if you have the president and first lady point to you and say, get it done, it's going to get done. And so we could either have a really long conversation or a brief visit. And the brief visits work. And if it isn't your first time, you've visited over the last 20 years. And you're talking about their kids that used to be young are now getting married and having grandkids and all that. So there's a power in shared experiences, relationships, friendships that are measured like ours collectively in decades. And if you're a nonprofit or want to do some things, forget the nonprofit. You want to make an impact in another country, get to know maybe some of the people in leadership. And then as they continue in leadership over the years, you just have a broader base. And it's not this messed up version called networking. It's actually being friends. And checking in with them and knowing their kids' birthdays. Or there was a high court justice that was there, and we were talking about his daughter, who is now 16 and going to have her like kind of debutante thing happening. And I remember being there at her baptismal in the first week of her life, and he had pictures that he brought. And so to just measure again things by decades. So whether you're starting small or want to have an organization around it, just surround that thing with relationships where there's nothing on the other side of the equal sign. Isn't like you do this, so I'll do this, and all that. There's just nothing. It's just loving people and no agenda, but definitely a strategy.
And I think we moved, we're creating a university there. We have the giraffe sanctuary. We'll talk about that a little bit later there. And that was a huge step forward because both the First Lady and the President really gave their nod of approval. And not only the nod of approval, but with the ministers that were at the meeting, let's move this forward quickly, which is pretty cool. And that's because of the relationships that you had formed previously. That being said, afterwards, we had this photo op and we were supposed to all get around, and the First Lady connected with you, Maria, in a really sweet way. She had read your book, Love Lives Here, and she went to hug you, and I don't know that she let go. I don't know that the security guards with the machine guns on the side loved that.
They did not like that.
I don't think they liked that at all.
No.
But what did that feel like to you? Because she was really moved to meet you. And then even all the other people who have who have read your book, and it's really impacted them.
It was super touching for sure, and unexpected. In fact, if I go back up a little bit, that meeting was something that was on the schedule and we knew about it, and everybody we were traveling with knew that that was going to happen that day. We had COVID tests. We knew we were going to wear masks. We knew that the setting would be that there would be a tent, 2 tents set up. She was going to sit in one across the way, and then like 30 feet away from her, we were going to be sitting in another tent facing her. And we would just have this conversation because that's her protocol. That's her preference. So we all knew that to expect that. But it wasn't until right before the meeting that I think somebody had talked to you, her assistant or whatever, and said, okay, this is where everybody's going to sit. And your visitors, what you call your delegates or whatever, the peanut gallery is what I call it.
It was very formal.
Very formal, but I just figured, we were all going to be behind you guys, listening to your relationship unfold with her, you connecting with what the plans were for the university and the giraffe sanctuary. And you said, and she wants you to sit up front next to Bob. And I thought, okay, but I don't need to say anything, right? And you said, no, just say hi or whatever. But she drilled down on that. She, for some reason, unexpectedly really wanted to talk to me. And so in that moment, I thought, wow, you had just talked about your history there and how, your relationship with the president and the first lady and Uganda has evolved over the years. You brought the whimsy and the fun and, the faith-based, focus on it. And then it goes to Jody, and she's just doing this amazing, impressive rundown of what everything. I mean, it was just, and I was just sort of lost in the moment. And then she calls on me. She said, I want to hear from you now. So we ran. I didn't have anything prepared to say, but I just shared with her and connected on what I was hearing from you guys and what I was feeling in the moment, and just wanted to acknowledge her role in all of this. Like, you guys go way back and she's been a part of it. And for some reason it's resonated with her. And I really think it was because she thought it was so unbelievable that you guys would want to try to do something so grand in the northern part of Uganda. Like, who goes there? Like, these are the least of these people. You weren't saying we want to do this in a showy place where everybody could see. It was like, no, we're going to go way up into the north where nobody goes and invest in this university, primary school, and now this giraffe sanctuary. And I thought, well done. Good job.
Well,
Thank you for blessing us.
moved by whatever you said in a way that it has to be one of those moments that you remember, maybe even in your lifetime, that you have somebody with that influence has read your words and was really taken with it. And it was really encouraged. So I think that was a moment. That was a moment for all of us. And then, of course, one of the other moments is, in this is the Uganda Wildlife Authority person who's there, which you'd go, why? And, last year we went to Uganda and to start the first steps to create this university. And while they're there, Jeff, who's helping us, he's created a university before, mentioned something that he had heard a rumor that Bob wanted to start a zoo at some point. And Bob said, of course, for sure. Yes, we are totally going to start a zoo. Like that was a long time ago. And like that room, like clearly that's crazy. Yeah. And he's like, no, we're going to build a zoo.
Totally.
And I looked at Bob and I was like, let's let this one die. Yeah. It feels like a lot to create a university.
I know that feeling, Jody.
And then he pivoted, like, I see you. So instead we're going to do a giraffe sanctuary. And I was like, I didn't know he was totally serious until I got back and there was a 4-foot stuffed giraffe on my desk. I was like, oh, he's serious. Yes. That being said, we've done some research in the last year and giraffes are actually endangered in Uganda. And so we've talked with some people about maybe doing a breeding program and acquiring some land. And actually the authorities in Uganda are really grateful for it. So it's very serious in that way. That being said, Bob, I don't know that the 5-year-old version of yourself was like, my heart's desire is to create a giraffe sanctuary. Like,
yes, but it's growing on you, right?
100%. But why do you do these things? And every time now somebody brings it up, they smile, right? And this is so quintessential Bob with so many of the things that he does in some really tough spaces and places. You bring on this additional action or endeavor and it brings so much joy to it. So tell us, what is behind the whole giraffe thing?
Yeah, I think that idea, the power of joy, that it just when a giraffe, originally we were just thinking, what animal could we have that doesn't bite people and would be hard to lose? And then it was like giraffes, obviously. But then it starts, it moves from just saying it to actually, this actually works. And we were meeting with the first lady, and then we started talking giraffes. And at 76, she ran across, grabbed her husband, and said, "You got to hear this." And if it was a university, we'd be talking like just a bunch of business people. But that idea, the whimsy, it's the intangible. It's that extra secret sauce that makes conversations matter. That's why humor is so good. It's the whimsy and the unlikeliness. It settles everybody down. It binds us together on this common, impossible dream. So there's something about that I think is so sticky. And then I've just told you everything I know about giraffes, like long neck, like right. And then our breeding program, Barry White music. I don't know. Like we'll figure it out.
We will figure it out.
Moodlet, Savannah. They'll figure it out. So what I want us to do is to not be restricted by what is practical. And yet you could have underneath that in that Milo strategy to say, we want to get to viability. And with a lot of seriousness, we, meaning you, got us to viability at the high school. Yeah. And now you're getting us to viability at the elementary school and preschool. And we have a plan with Jeff and the others to get us to viability with this university. In other words, we don't have to ask people for a bunch of money to do that. We're going to actually get there. And I really love the idea that if you go to a hotel, there's a concierge. And if you say, I'm hungry, they'll say, well, what do you want? Do you want a hot dog? Do you want Italian? Do you want, what do you want to eat? And so with this group of friends, it's a worldwide family of friends, to be the concierge for them, because it's their generosity. They're the ones that are making stuff happen, to say, so here's an idea. I don't know if you think this is crazy, but would this be something that sounds attractive? Does this bring a little twinkle to your eye? And I really love that role, to be in, when you zoom out, we're at best the conduit of other people's generosity. And so we could just say, like, how could we be helpful? Like, what could we do? And put like tangible, viable plans and for well thought through, not just a bunch of yippee skippy, but to say this thing will work, I think. And if it fails, I want to fail trying. I don't want to fail watching.
And we don't take it lightly. And I also love the
Yeah.
strategy, to me, behind the giraffes. It's going to sit on the side of our university.
Yeah.
And a lot of students, especially in that area of the country, have never seen the big game.
Yeah.
And to think of a university student sitting in their classroom, hopefully it's a world-class university, looking out the window and seeing a giraffe, and how do they not think, what can't I do?
Yes.
You know, and so there is that next level that is the intangible, the secret sauce is actually very strategic, and it is really impactful. So I love that you do that part.
Think of the preschool students who we didn't have until you and the Uganda team said, we got to find a way to onboard these kids because they're in a hut and they just can't keep up if we start them at kindergarten. And so that I had nothing to do with that. It was just like kind of like, just get out of the way. You're like, hold my earrings. So the letting the preschool students see the elementary school, have the elementary school see the junior high school kids, have the junior high school see the high school kids, and have the high school kids see the university. And like, there's something beautiful and cumulative about that, that we can make it tangible and have that kid in a hut see a giraffe. That works if you're 6 and it works if you're 60. Giraffes just work. You know, pythons, not so much. Black mambas, not at all, but giraffes all day long.
And nursery students in those pink graduation gowns work wonders for people who are going. And then for me, there's that burden that just says it's on us to make sure that that really cute kid that this school is around so that they can graduate and be around too. And that's a whole group of people that have come beside us to help make that happen. That being said, there's a lot of days that I go back to my house within Love Does, and I hear stories, and I have a moment of just being so grateful to God for what he's doing. And through Love Does and through the people that I get to work with and all the different stories, how has being involved with it for so long impacted your faith?
Well, it solidifies it, that's for sure. Because if you're trying to find God in this world, you can just look at what's going on around you, and it's bigger than us. And so that helps my faith feel more. So I don't necessarily understand everything about God. I don't necessarily have all of the verses memorized and stuff, but I have felt like I have been in that presence of sacred ground. And that definitely happens at the school. It's happening right here too, just like our conversation. It feels good. It feels right. It feels like this is the stuff that matters. And so I can't help but feel inspired in my faith to learn more and grow and give more. And I think of that one verse, though, the one maybe one I do know is to whom much is given, much is required. And I think of that, that's for all of us. That's not just, people in the ivory towers with a lot of resources. It's just all of us, because we've been given this gift of life. And so the question we have to ask ourselves, what are we going to do with that? And so we're sitting here talking about, well, maybe we'll do this giraffe sanctuary, which, by the way, the university students taking zoology classes are going to take care of those giraffes. So it's just like, how can you not hear stories like that of what's going on in the world and not believe that there's a God that's just like smiling at all of this? I want to be a part of that.
Yeah, the amazing part is that we're invited to participate. Each of us in our own way. You don't need to go across an ocean. We always just say, go across the street, like make it happen. And so whatever confluence of opportunities and ideas and friendships got us overseas, we'll just say, like Maria says, like, grow where you're planted. Like, just say, like, okay, so for whatever reason, we're in Uganda. What could we do here? Get your head on a swivel, look for the opportunities. There's a great, when you ask about faith, definition in Hebrews 11:1. It says, faith is confidence in what you're hoping for and assurance in what you haven't seen yet. And I would say, if there's one kind of omnibus idea, it goes pairs with another one in Galatians 5:6. It says that the only thing that matters is faith expressed in love. So you think confidence in what you're hoping for, assurance of what you haven't seen, and expressed in love. So
Yeah.
if you could put those two together, then
Mhm.
let that guide your steps today, whether you're
Mhm.
doing the noble work of planting
Mhm.
plants to
Mhm.
feed people here
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
abroad, bagging groceries
Mhm.
in some professional capacity, the
Mhm.
noble work of a teacher to
Mhm.
say, I'm going to grow where I'm planted.
Mhm.
I'm going to know what I'm hoping for. I'm going to express my faith and love.
Mhm.
And then the kicker is that God doesn't need our help. Like I just keep reminding myself, as hard as we work to try to help out, because we want to be helpful.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but what he wants is our hearts. And
Yeah.
so for me to just continue to remind me, like, what would really dazzle the angels if I got my heart continued to be on, because we don't want to be like successful in the business of this stuff. We want to be successful in the heart behind this stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
Faith expressed
Yes.
in love.
Yeah.
You wrote Love Does, and that really resonated with so many people, just to take that next step to move to action.
Mhm.
It was like a movement in a lot of ways, and we've
Mhm.
seen it now around the world. It's really fun to see Love Does on all these buildings
Mm.
in conflict zones, I mean,
Mhm.
where you would least find them.
Mhm.
And so you wrote that a long time ago. You wrote several books since. You have a book coming out in December. Tell us a little bit about that.
It said that Jesus never spoke to anybody without telling them a story or two. And so for me, I don't know about you, but I don't resonate with the information. I don't care how many ounces are in a gallon or what. That doesn't move me. But if you tell me how many dates were in Steve's pursuit of you,
Mm-hmm.
I'd be in, because I'd want to know that story. How did he get tips on you? So what I've tried to do is wed together some of the scriptures that mean a lot to me. And I usually in my books don't put Bible verses, but in this one, in this devotional style, I thought I'm just going to find something that is descriptive of a concept that makes sense to me, and then a story that gives me greater clarity. Lets me interact with that. So that idea to just kick off the day with something. So it's just short little vignettes, and it's easy for long-winded guys like me to write long books. It's actually hard to do short books. Yeah. So 365 of those.
Is there
Yes.
another book in you?
Yes, it's brewing, Jody.
Okay.
It's brewing. It's been 7 years, so I
Yeah.
feel like, the Bible talks about the lamb laying, what's that
Fallow.
word? Fallow for, the 7 years. So I feel like that's happened. And a lot has happened in the last 7 years and in our life and mine personally. We're grandparents now since I wrote Love Lives Here. So there's that layer of my life that's new. And we've grown, we've done different things. And so it's a continuation. And I wrote the first one for my kids. And so it would be like volume 2 of that,
Kids.
Yeah, like
oh wow,
more stories, along the same lines. And so I know they're there. And if you've been around Bob long enough, which I know you have, you've heard him tell everybody they have a book in them. So we all have, I mean, if you're alive and you're breathing, you're living your own story and you need to write it down. Yes. So it's just our duty, Jody. We need to write books. Everybody should be doing this. And it doesn't matter if you've arrived, if you feel like you've got something figured out, just write it down, because your kids are going to want to know what you went through, what you were thinking, things that you've learned.
I love that.
So,
I love that.
yeah.
When we were at that epic meeting with the president and first lady, the president said, he asked if anyone had any questions, which is kind of dangerous.
Yes.
And I did ask him, what did he want his legacy to be? Which is a pretty cool thing you get to ask somebody who's the head of a country.
Yes.
And it was really remarkable, the conversation.
Yeah.
But what do you want the legacy of Love Does to be?
Yeah, the organization, we wanted to first not be person or personality centric. So it's that if they think about Love Does, people will think that is blue chip. And I'm not really sure who's running it, but I just know what they're doing is like not making the wrong kind of headlines. It's the right kind, that they're just steady, blue chip and all that. So that's one legacy, not personality driven. And number 2, not flashy, that we're not hip, like, because I just like from its beginning, we're not hip, but what we do is be impactful. And then number 3, I think humble, that we're talking about our Ugandan friends. We're talking about our Afghan teachers. We're talking about the people that show up in Burkina Faso every day. That we continue to hold the mirror up to them and communicate what it is that they're doing. And then we could just be the concierge for other people in their generosity. They might not have a way to do whatever it is that catches their attention, but say, well, if we can help you out, just let us know. And it's actually, that has been the case in a couple of countries. Somebody will come to you and they'll say, I want to start a school. And you say, well, actually, we've started quite a few. This is about what it costs. And they say, like, paper or plastic. And so then we're off in that country starting a school. Sometimes you just need a good person in a country, and then a good plan. And then it's just like grab your knees and do a cannonball.
Yeah, we got up to 14 countries pretty quickly.
In a big hurry.
We sure did. We sure did.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I just totally agree with what Bob just said. It's just wondering like where those seeds are going to land, that started with Love Does at its humble beginnings, and to be pleasantly surprised like in eternity, if we're just walking around going, whoa, look what you did because of this. Look what you did. That just, I don't know if we'll ever really have a full grasp of the impact, and that's okay. I just know that if we are giving from our heart and we're planting those seeds, that harvest someday will blow our minds. And so sky's the limit.
I think it already is.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago, we put on social media that we were going to have this conversation. And so people could write in with questions. And interestingly enough, there weren't a lot of questions about Love Does, but they wanted to know a lot about love and you all and falling in love and when hearts get broken and all sorts of different things.
Goodness.
So I thought it would be fun to do the marriage game.
Okay.
I know. So get ready. So it's going to be rapid fire questions.
Okay.
And
this
we're going
is like speed dating.
And we're going to see. Yeah. Now you're nervous. You haven't been nervous, but now you're nervous.
Maria, this is not.
Can
your
I pass
thing.
if there's one too hard?
Yeah,
sure.
Okay.
You're just going to point to each other. So we're going to see how much you agree. Okay.
All right.
And for a lot of people, they are watching us on YouTube, and so they'll be able to see if you agree. But some are listening, and so I'll let people know if you have agreed or not. So, like, here would be the sample question: like, who loves giraffes more? Right, you both agree
all day long.
Yep.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, so we ready to go?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Who is more romantic? They looked at each other.
Yeah.
They looked at each other.
Yeah, it's like that's
okay.
a tie.
All right. Who said "I love you" first?
Oh, I remember. I said that
in a card.
But
In a card.
a
In a card.
big one.
Yeah, he big giant Valentine's card.
in
We
caps?
weren't even dating,
Oh, okay. He loved you then.
Yeah, he said he
Yeah.
deposited that right away.
Yeah.
But then
Right.
I kissed him first.
Yeah, that was our thing.
I didn't
We
even
were
ask that question.
in
okay.
Santa
Holy
Barbara, but I
cow.
said I
Yeah.
can't be that guy.
Yeah.
So you would need to
Yeah.
kiss me because
Yeah.
I can't be that guy.
Yeah. And the kids love that. Ironically, that was in the back of a van. I mean, how bad does that sound?
So how about this? Who's the better dancer?
Oh,
I think we're about tied.
We both-
Both tied
Oh
for
my
last.
gosh, there's a lot.
last.
They're tying for
Yeah.
all these things. Okay, who gets up earlier?
I think,
Bob.
usually me to get up earlier to do something,
yeah.
and Maria will get up earlier because she's just
I
done
can't
sleeping.
sleep.
Yeah. So it's like,
I do.
yeah,
You feel the
mine's
pain.
getting up earlier on purpose,
Yeah.
and hers is out of like, well, forget it. I'm just getting
I
up.
just can't sleep.
Who is more patient?
Me.
Yeah.
Was easy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No question about that.
Okay, who has a cleaner car?
Oh, I
Me.
think you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
Okay.
truck's pretty messy.
Who cries the most?
I think
Both
we
of
both
us.
have
Oh,
a
yeah.
high water table. Yeah.
We thought we were different. We're morphing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're becoming. We started out. You're very
This is
different,
weird.
but this is
After
actually
3 decades, I
Yeah.
think we've become one.
This
Okay.
is how it is. All right, here's our last question.
Yeah.
Who likes tradition more?
Oh, I think we're both
We're
tied
both,
on that one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, what is your
Everything
favorite
is moment.
tradition?
Oh, the one that came to mind, I don't know the favorite, but the one that came to mind immediately is Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Instead of doing the big like cook up things and be in the kitchen forever, we get In-N-Out Burger. So when I had a Volkswagen bus, we would load in the bus and we would go and get our In-N-Out burgers and come back and we put out the fancy crystal and china and all that. But then every year it's In-N-Out burgers. I love that.
Yeah, that's a fun tradition. That I would say the same thing.
And everybody smiles and does it. Well, I love it.
Yeah.
Well,
Thanks,
thanks
Jody.
for playing the game.
Yeah,
Thanks for your time,
that
and
was fun.
and just thanks for encouraging so many people with your books, your lives, and through Love Does.
Hey, and can I flip this just for a moment to you and the way that you've led with love? You are that steady person. You are cool as a cucumber when in the face of some significant obstacles. You're unflappable, and you are the right leader for right now as we continue to move forward. I'm just so glad that you're at the helm with Love Does, and I hope you'll just stick around for a really long time because we have thrived. Everyone that's participated has made their contribution, but right now we're in high gear and doing some big stuff, and you're the right person in the chair.
Thank you, Bob and Maria. It's an honor, honestly. And so
likewise,
let's do more decades.
Yeah, come on. I'm
Stacking hands.
Done. Done. Come on.
So thanks.
Hey, everybody, it's Bob Goff here. I've been part of this great caper called Love Does for quite a while. And I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. If you want to have some more information about Love Does, you can go to lovedoes.org. You could also email hello@lovedoes.org. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Here's the important part. Do something, whatever that is. Don't just agree with what you heard. What's your next courageous step? See you later.